Oh, thank you for joining.
Thank you for joining the Spokesman-Review for our
Northwest
Northwest
event with
Passages
Myles
event with
Kennedy.
Myles Kennedy.
I'm Ed Condran,
I'm Ed
features
Condran,
writer for the
features writer for the
Spokesman-Review, and I
Spokesman-Review,
welcome the
and I
South
welcome
Hill
the South Hill
singer-songwriter who recently released his latest solo album, The
album,
Ides of
The Ides
March.
of March.
We'll talk about
We'll
the
talk
album
about the
and a
album
variety of
and a
topics.
variety of
And
topics.
Myles,
And Myles,
it's great to chat with you again. Thanks for taking the
Thanks for
time.
taking the
How
time.
are you?
How are you?
Pleasure. I'm good. It's great to see you. This is the first time we officially see each other. We've done phoners, but it's good to see your face.
It's true.
It's true. It's been a long
pandemic,
pandemic,
and that's why we haven't seen each other.
Speaking of pandemics,
if I could take you back to February 27th, 2020, you're performing with date was at the Knitting Factory, and it was just before you guys were going to tour Asia and South America. And if I recall correctly, you ended up telling me, Myles, you were chatting with your manager, and you were saying, how am I going to have the time to make this album? And so it became like this Twilight Zone in a way, like the Mr. Bemis episode about the bank manager looking for more time and dreaming of it. Well, you ended up with more time than you ever imagined. If you could take me back to that and tell me about how it all went with all this time.
Yeah. Yeah. Be careful what you wish for. It was like, I remember we were somewhere and, 2 weeks left in the tour, and he's like laying it out for me, like what the rest of the year looked like. He's like, well, we're going to, so good news. We've got South America, and I think Asia had just been maybe pulled out because they were starting to see what was happening with the pandemic. So there was some, that was the first time that discussion had been had, that this was starting to affect touring. And but with that said, then he drops, and oh, by the way, you do know you've got a solo record that you have to record in August. And I'm like, oh man, how am I going to find time to do all of this? And so fast forward 2 weeks, we finished the tour in Spokane, and a few days later, it wasn't long after that, that then everything kind of shuts down. And I'm like, well, I can sit here and, just kind of be frustrated, or I can go ahead and utilize the time and start recording some of these songs, start writing these songs and recording them in my studio. And so, yeah, it's a year later, here we are still kind of in gradually opening up. I was just walking by the television, and my wife, it was like there's a hockey game going on, and this arena thing was just full of people. Like it looked like it was 2019, and so I'm seeing that in certain pockets things are definitely getting back to as they were.
No, exactly.
It's getting there.
It's getting there. But going back to the album, then, so the crux of the material was written when you're hunking down South Hill, correct?
Correct. Yeah, I'd say about 80% of the record was written between March of 2020 and July of 2020. There are 2 songs on the record that were written in 2009, believe it or not.
Wow.
And one song is called Love Rain Down. Yeah, Love Rain Down. And then a song called Wanderlust Begins. And those were songs that I liked, and I just never could find an appropriate home for them. Neither one would fit in the other entities that I perform in. And so my wife was funny. We were sitting there one night, and she's like, what song would fit really well with the kind of the narrative of this record would be Wanderlust Begins. Cause obviously we're all, cooped up at home, and we would want to get out. And I thought, yeah, that's a good idea. And then when we were going to when we were in the studio making the record, and I had a bunch of songs, and then I was like, well, before we commit to what songs are going to be recorded, I just want you guys to hear this demo that I made 12 years ago. And when I played Love Rain Down for the producer and my rhythm section, Z and Tim, they're like, oh, we got to put that song on the record. So, yeah.
Wow. No,
Wow. No,
it's a great song.
it's a great song.
And
And
if Wanderlust
if
begins, I mean,
Wanderlust
obviously
begins,
it's
I mean, obviously
about
it's
being
about
trapped
being
where you
trapped
are during the
where you are
pandemic, and
during
you
the
would love to
pandemic,
head
and
to a
you
beach
would love to
somewhere.
head
But
to a beach
my
somewhere.
first
But
thought was
my
about
first thought
Wanderlust
was
with you,
about
Miles,
Wanderlust with you,
because
Miles,
you've
because
never left
you've never
Spokane.
left
Granted, you're on the
Spokane. Granted,
road
you're
all
on
the
the road
time,
all the time,
pre-pandemic. But so
pre-pandemic.
many of your
But so many of your
peers who once
peers
they ended
who
up
once
hitting
they
it,
ended up
they
hitting it,
left cities
they
like
left cities
Spokane
like
for Los
Spokane for
Angeles
Los
or wherever.
Angeles
And
or wherever.
why
And
stay here?
why stay here?
Well, I think I always knew what people are now figuring out, which was that it's just right. You know, it's funny how now we have this influx of people who are discovering it and now coming here from cities like LA and bigger areas. And but I always felt like it was just this really nicely kept secret, and it was just the quality of life was great, just the right size. People were cool. And so, yeah, I figured why leave? You know, there was a period where when I first started playing with Alter Bridge, my wife and I rented a place in Orlando, and we tried that for, I don't know, about 6 months because it was just easier because we were rehearsing and making a record. But we discovered pretty early in the process that we're Spokanites at heart. So we got back home.
And what sparked some of the material?
Some of the
You're saying
material.
80%
You're
of the
saying 80%
songs
of
were
the
from
songs
here.
were from
I
here.
mean, it was
I mean,
X
it was
amount
X
from
amount
being
from
here in
being
Spokane,
here in
or
Spokane, or
just
just
the vibe of the country,
vibe of
like
the
songs
country,
like Great
songs like
Divide.
Great
I mean,
Divide. I mean, if that was
about how
about
the Great
how
Division
the
in our
Great
country,
Division in our country, or
Well, yeah, the first track, Get Along, was, you know, it was interesting because that was, look, I guess the first answer to that question, it was definitely informed by the times we were living in, and it was just kind of a reflection of everything that was going on, and me really just trying to make sense of it, because, you know, at the beginning of all this, there was just a lot of uncertainty. We didn't know where things were going, and so I was trying to express that sentiment and understand and just make sense of things ultimately. And with a song like Get Along, you know, it's a pretty broad stroke. The genesis of it came when I was trying to come up with the melody. I had some basic music, and I'm strumming along, and I'm like, oh, why can't we all just get along? And I thought, well, that, you know, I remember hearing that phrase back in the 90s. So then keep in mind, this was probably March when I came up with it. And I thought, oh yeah, you know, I remember just the difficult time we were going through, you know, the LA riots and all of that. And so then I thought we'd start with that and then kind of weave it into just the general sense of just people butting heads and a certain amount of intolerance and things that were just kind of breaking my heart, just looking at the universe. And interestingly enough, fast forward to the summer, and then it got really, you know, it ended up kind of being prophetic in a way. So yeah, that was interesting.
No, absolutely.
No, absolutely.
But the song I have to really go on
with
is
you about
the title track,
the
Ides
title
of
track,
March.
Ides of March.
I mean, I was listening to it again and again before chatting with you today, and I just feel like that, Miles, could be your signature song. I mean, to me, it's such an epic, this wonderful opus where it's sonically rich, it's baroque, it has an unbelievable message. But the question I have for you is when I listen to it after maybe the 15th time, it hit me about elements possibly of Led Zeppelin. I was just wondering how much did you draw from your influence of of Led Zeppelin that you listened to so much throughout your childhood here in Spokane?
I think probably indirectly. It's funny, when I write songs, I generally don't think, oh, I want to write a song like this and try and make it like that. So I just kind of stay in the moment, kind of stay present. It's interesting when I hear that song, especially the vocal, like it, you know, the "we'll just be on the blue horizon." To me, it's very, that I can hear my love of Bowie in the way I'm phrasing that. You know, David Bowie was a massive influence on me vocally, and so, you know, that song is kind of like this combination of all of those elements of Bowie, of Zeppelin. There's, you know, just a kind of a musical stew. And that's really what I love about making these solo records, is you get to take all those influences and kind of try and create your own thing.
Well, you did that.
Well, you
and,
did
and
that.
the one last part about the song is Dakota. Just when I thought it was going to end, the first time I heard it, it just took off and started soaring one last time. And what creatively inspires you to when the song feels like maybe this is complete, but I have to add this part, which you did. I feel on Ides of March, put it over the top for me.
Thank you. I really appreciate hearing that, because you know what, I thought about just finishing it with having it be like a kind of a, you know, it could have been a 4 or 5 minute song, and you could have I could have found a way to bookend it before getting to that coda. But I knew, not just musically, but from the narrative standpoint, I was like, you know, the first half of the song expresses the fears and the uncertainty, but I really want to take this and take a turn into an optimistic take on the world, and that I believe things can change, things can get better, and that, you know, cool heads prevail in times of change. And that was it, because they become mantras for me and how I think and how I exist, you know, with my brother, you know, in society, with all of us. And so, but trying to integrate that required sonically a chord progression and everything that was very major and would for me, it was very cinematic. I wanted it to hit that part, and I wanted the clouds to part. I wanted the listener to suddenly see the clouds part and see the blue sky, and be, you know, everything falls away, and then there's the element of hope. And so I tell you what, I chased that down for months. I threw so many different parts at it, and it was like, nope, it's not right. I would demo it, and I'd listen to it with fresh ears, and I'd go, nope, you're still not there yet. So it really means a lot to hear that it wasn't all in vain. That finally, when I you know, kind of hit the right combination, that it translated to the listener.
No, I can't wait to experience it live. And one more Zeppelin note. I won't beat Zeppelin to death, but I have to mention for the uninitiated that Myles in 2008 received an invitation from Zeppelin icons, Jimmy Page and John Paul Jones, to join them for sessions. And to me, how surreal is that for a kid growing up in Spokane? Hoping to be a musician. You're listening to God knows how much Led Zeppelin as a kid, and then one day the Golden Gods give you a call that is just unimaginable.
It's totally surreal. And every time somebody brings it up, I still have to wonder if I'm living in the Matrix. Like, is this all this? There's no way this has all happened. But to my memory, there were some moments that unless I'm living in the Matrix, that I guess happened. And so yeah, it's pretty crazy. And I think that it happened, interestingly enough, because of that movie Rockstar, because Jason Bonham and that's where I met him, and I expressed how much his father's legacy meant to me. And he's so proud of his dad, which I think is beautiful. As somebody who also lost my father at a young age, and so it's cool to see him doing the same thing, and being proud of his father. So yeah, fast forward 7 years later, after I'd last seen him, and I get this text, and he basically said, "Hey, you know, I have a favor I need to ask." And I thought, I was on tour in Europe, and I thought he had a friend who maybe wanted to come to a show or something. And so I called him, and he told me, he said, yeah, basically said, you know, I'm here with some friends, and we're wondering if you'd be interested in jamming. And I said, well, who are your friends? And then he told me, and I just, you know, I turned probably pale as a ghost, and the rest is history.
Wow, it sounds like something out of Punk'd.
Yeah. Right. You know, I think that, yeah, it could have been, someone could have totally just been messing with me. But somehow, yeah, they're from what I remember, I was actually in a room with those gentlemen for a little while, and it was amazing experience.
Oh, I bet. Just about a song or so. What song that you played with them hit you the hardest? Meant the most.
The Rain song. Yeah, that's always been one of my favorites, and that was when I had to kind of step away from the mic, because it got emotional, you know, playing, you know, hearing them play that together, and hearing John Paul Jones come in with that haunting Mellotron part. And that was the moment that got me. Like, I had to just turn away from the mic and be like, this is as good as it's ever going to get, you know, this moment, as far as a musician. So it was wonderful.
Wow. And going back, you mentioned Rockstar, and it's funny looking back. It looks like you have some promises as an actor. What was that experience like? I mean, it was such a fun story. Loosely based on the Judas Priest experience with Ripper Owens replacing Rob Halford. And how was that? And did you hope to continue acting after that at all?
You know what's funny? And I don't even really think I was acting, because I was any sort of like ecstatic, kind of, and all of that exuberance and innocence that you see, that was legit. I was just like, how did I get here? Like, this is crazy. I'm in a like a massive Hollywood big budget film, and I was just having the time of my life. I was just having so much fun. But they actually, I think the casting lady asked me if I'd be interested in acting again, and I don't know if I said no. I don't know what, I can't remember how I responded, but one thing I learned during the process was actors get up really early. Like it's a totally different scene than being in a band, being a rock musician. Because a rock musician, we don't start the day till noon, and actors are up at like 5 a.m. They got to go get makeup and drive to the set and all that. So I think it probably wouldn't be the right lifestyle for me.
No. I'm sure you definitely made the right decision. But what will Rockstar know? Because with Ripper Owens discovering he has this voice, the character in the film played by Mark Wahlberg. I'll take this back to you. When did you realize, Myles, that you have such a set of pipes? Because I think most people are not, when they have a special gift early on, they discovered I can do this. Everybody else can. What is your story about your voice and how you developed it? Spokane.
Well, going to my family, we went to this church. Obviously, my stepfather Glenn is a pastor, so we'd sit in church and I'd hear people sing, and I would sing and congregate, just sing along with everybody singing hymns. And I didn't really think anything of it. I just thought everybody could sing. And I guess the moment when I kind of knew was when we had a thing here in town. This would have been like 1986, I think. And it was called the Drug Free Rock Off. And they had it at the convention center. And it was a battle of the bands for like teenagers. But the whole thing was just drug free, which is cool. And so there were like, I don't know, 5 bands that participated. And I was in this band. And the 5 of us each traded vocals. So, and the first song on the set was, strangely enough, Rock and Roll by Led Zeppelin. And I was elected to sing that song. And so I remember we played it, and I was terrified. I had the worst stage fright. Like, it was so bad. Like, other guys from other bands are like coming over to talk to me to like calm me down because they felt so bad for me. Like, this poor little, and I was kind of a late bloomer. So I was this little kid. I was very small compared to everybody else. And like, oh, that poor little guy, he's terrified to go on stage. And so they would like, oh, it's going to be okay. So we got up and we did it. And after I finished singing, like, there was a certain reaction with the crowd. And I was like, huh. I just thought, I just sang. I didn't really think anything of it. But that was the moment where I thought, well, maybe, But then I didn't do it for like another few years. And I just wanted to play guitar and just was like, nah.
Right.
Yeah. So just, it's funny how life's turned out.
Well, no, it sounds like how certain rockers like James Hetfield. He was a reluctant vocalist. He was all about the guitar for him, and it had to happen. But I feel like it's a little bit different. I mean, when I think of you, I think of Chris Cornell. I just am taken aback by the range you possess. I mean, you ended up in the right spot.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. It was a lot of dumb luck I had, but somehow it all worked out.
Oh no! You have the talent, and I know how hard you've worked. But I'm amused by that event, the drug-free event, and then maybe the next year you're at Joe Albi Stadium watching Monsters of Rock, which was not a drug-free event.
Right? Yeah, that was definitely, that was a totally different scene, and that was something I will never forget. I remember being so I got there early because I was the kid that liked to, kind of be in the thick of it. And there was a band called Kingdom Come that played first. And then I don't remember if Metallica was second. They were like second or third. But all I remember is once they started, like just the entire, there were all these dudes that just came from behind and rushed up to the front of the stage. And it was like a totally different show. And it was just this intense energy. Not for the faint of heart, that's for sure. It was pretty amazing.
No, it was
No,
a
it was a
different
different
day then. In
day then.
Metallica,
In Metallica,
my memory serves was second, but it was a day when. It's funny you say that you were a kid that wanted to be up front, but I remember those days when there was no stability. You were crushed up against the barrier, and I remember seeing Black Sabbath, during the early '80s being pushed relentlessly. So the hope would be you would climb over the barricade, so everyone would be that much closer. It is just so different than today.
Now, did you see them with Dio or with Glenn Hughes? Do you remember which version of Sabbath you saw?
I remember it like yesterday. Quiet Riot opened. I ended up seeing them with Ian Gillan.
Oh, wow. Cool.
Yeah, that was the Born Again tour in 1993. But I did see them with Dio, and I mean, to me, it fascinates me about that band. I can't think of a band that reimagined itself with another singer like Dio. To me, he's so different than Ozzy, and to me, he's my favorite metal singer of all time.
He's one of mine as well. Without it, like Ronnie was, he's a force of nature when that guy would open his mouth. Amazing.
Well, so are you, and especially when I hear songs again like the title track, and then if I can mention one other song from the album, A Thousand Words. That is such a heavy song, Myles. Tell me where that came from.
Well, I appreciate that. I was sitting on the couch kind of during the beginning of all of this, of the when everything shut down, and I had stumbled onto. Oftentimes, I'll just be kind of noodling around, come up with a chord progression, and then a melody will pop into my head, and I heard da 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 da, and I was like, well, I don't know what that what to plug in there lyrically. And about an hour later, my wife is sitting there and she goes, "Oh, her friend Tara, who are friends here in town, Blake and Tara," and she's like, "Look at the picture that she just put up on her Facebook. She went to her father's funeral this weekend. So it was a picture of her mother, like standing over the grave, looking at her husband in the ground, and it was." I mean, even talking about it, I still get goosebumps because it's such a heavy picture. And it just said, it was that picture that said everything about about our mortality, about love and loss and everything. And I was just like, picture says 1,000 words. And that was where that line just kind of came. And so that was the genesis of the inspiration there was that moment.
No, very cool. And again, 80% of it happened here in Spokane. And so what did you do? I know aside from writing, I know you hunkered down to write, you were creating. But what did you and your wife do to keep it going during this?
Well, my wife is extremely patient with me and my writing schedule, it's like being a doctor on call all the time. So she's awesome that way. But once the record was done, then it was just a matter of trying to find things to do. And I experimented briefly with photography. I'm horrible. I have an aunt who lives here who is an incredible photographer. And she just won this award, and she's just like, she's really gifted. But me, I did not inherit that gene. So I gave up on the photography tip. And so, yeah, still just a lot of guitar playing, kind of a lot of noodling every day. And what else? We were adopted. We were adopted by the neighborhood cat. So that we integrated this beautiful black cat into the family. Azrael, as we call him. But yeah, just enjoying being home. Going on long walks every day and enjoying being in Spokane.
Yeah, how weird it must be, because your whole life is waking up and who knows where on a tour bus at noon. So how did you deal with domestic life overall? Was it a good experience overall?
Yeah, you know what? The thing is I pretty much won the lottery when it comes to my marriage, and my wife is awesome. So every moment that I can be here and wake up next to her, it's a good day. And I know that might sound a little, like a little romantic, whatever. But I have a great thing. So to get to for the last year, kind of revel in that. It's weird when you're on the road all the time. It's a lonely existence. It really is. You wake up in the bus, it's a new city every night or every morning, hotel. It's a lot of solitary, especially when you're on days off and whatnot. So it's been really nice to embrace domestic life and be with the family.
Absolutely. And so
while you're still here, before
everything
everything starts opening up, where can we find you? Where do you see a Myles Kennedy on the streets of Spokane?
Well, so him and his wife, you might see us, taking our daily walk up somewhere up on the South Hill. Yeah, we spend a lot of time up on the South Hill. Other than that, I don't leave the house a ton. We've started going on drives once in a while. Like we drove out to Coeur d'Alene a few times in the last few weeks. It's just crazy beautiful out there. I mean, it's insane. And look, this is one of the most, in fact, that stretch of road on I-90, when you leave Spokane and you head towards Montana, I actually asked a bus driver this once, one of our tour bus drivers, and I said, tell me, what's the prettiest stretch of road in all the United States? And he said, that is the stretch of road. So that's coming from a guy who drives all over the U.S. nonstop, and he says between Spokane to Montana, that's it.
No, it is a beautiful stretch, but also just about Spokane, and we're about to hit the reset button. And what you've seen, you've been all over the road. Do you have any thoughts on what the city needs to take the next step as a concert destination in terms of venues? What are your thoughts about that, Myles?
Ooh, that's a good question. I don't know. I mean, I think that what's going to be interesting is to see what venues. It's kind of like restaurants. What's going to be left standing after all of this? How many places will there be to play? And that's certainly been a concern from really once this drug on for a number of months. Because how does any business sustain itself? So yeah, I don't know if I necessarily have any advice there. I'm trying to stay optimistic that once things gradually continue to reopen and life gets back to normal, fingers crossed, that we can kind of just settle back into the way it was. I'm trying to stay optimistic.
No, absolutely. And looking ahead, what's next for Ultra Bridge?
So we're hoping to get in the studio at some point next year. That's hoping, and then we'll see what happens with the touring machine and how we can get that back up and running. And yeah, with Alter Bridge, with Slash Conspirators, with all of that, it's kind of we're essentially in a holding pattern just to see what's going to happen. I mean, obviously right now I'm focused on the solo thing, and I've got dates next month. In certain parts of the United States, and we're going to see how that works. It should be interesting. But as far as the other entities, we're just going to wait and see.
Well, and you mentioned hitting the road. Do you have any idea when you might be playing a hometown date for your solo album, showcasing it here in Spokane?
I hope sooner than later. I'm in a perfect world, maybe fingers crossed, fall or early winter would be nice. So that would be great. I miss playing home.
Well, no, it's going to be a lot of fun when you do. But one more, you mentioned Slash. What is it like working with him? Because interviewing him, he's such a laid back, mellow dude, and I wonder what he'd be like because I always think when I think of Guns N' Roses, I think of that whole Spinal Tapping, Fire and Ice between he and Axl. So what's Slash like to work with?
He's just super chill, super cool. It's really easy writing songs with him. That's one thing I learned early on, was that for somebody who's as accomplished as he is and has done as much as he's done, he's very very open to ideas that, as long as it's good for the song, and he's like, yeah, let's give it a try, which I love that. And he's so amazing. And I've learned a ton from him. It's interesting because when growing up seeing Guns N' Roses, kind of what what you thought it was, you knew it was great songs and it was dangerous and it was all this. But what I didn't realize is that these guys, at least what I know of working with Slash, there's a reason why they're so good, which is that he rehearses and rehearses and rehearses. It's not like we just show up unrehearsed and kind of wing things. It's like, no, it's like when we get in the thick of it, we're playing these songs over and over and over again. Cause he's obviously a firm believer in being well rehearsed and putting in the hours. And so that's that's been inspiring. I think that that's something that people might not realize.
Oh, I'm sure.
Oh,
And
I'm
you
sure.
look at
And
it,
you look at it,
it's Guns N' Roses, but you look at Bruce Springsteen. I mean, that's the big reason why he's always been over-prepared. But it's one more thing about Guns N' Roses. I mean, when they hit, you were in high school, and they went through the roof. You were, I think, just about graduating high school, and then you end up with, writing with Slash. It's surreal, man.
My life has been really it's been interesting twists and turns, to say the least. Yeah, if somebody would have told me in 1987 when I first heard Welcome to the Jungle, sitting here in Spokane. Actually, you know what? I think when I first heard it, I was actually in Wenatchee. It's a long story. So I was in Wenatchee, but then like coming back here, we were playing some of those gun songs, and Zia and I. So Zia's on the solo record, Zia Udine, and he went to Meade High School with me, and so we were in this band called Bittersweet, and we were playing Welcome to the Jungle, and like by December of '87, like they weren't massive at that point. But we heard that song and we were like, that's amazing. We used to play at these Granges on the north side of town. We'd throw these like parties for all the kids at like Meade High School and other high schools, and we played these shows, and we did all these covers, and that was one of the covers. So if you would have told me, back then, like one day you would make records with, the guitar player for, like 11 years, whatever it's been, and I'd been like, no way. There's no way. So here we are.
No, that is, and I'm sure Slash laughed when you told him about that.
Yeah, it's fun to for the whole band, because everybody came from that same. It's the same story. All the guys in the band, were playing those songs and listening to those records. So he definitely appreciates it.
But you touched on something dead on. I remember seeing Guns N' Roses early on after their first headlining slot beyond Aerosmith, and there was this palpable sense of danger and unpredictability. And I missed that. It was an amazing era when you look back at the 80s, which so many people slam dead wrong.
I agree. I think that there was a lot of really legit things happening back then, and it was kind of obviously it led up to what then happened with the grunge movement a few years later. But I feel like a band like Guns N' Roses in a lot of ways, and I think you and I have talked about this, where essentially you had GNR, and then there's some other bands that started to pop up like Jane's Addiction and Faith No More, which in a way kind of paved the way for
the bridge.
Yeah, and when Soundgarden was starting to put out records as well, but like then when the big Nirvana record came out, then it just all blew wide open. But I feel like in a lot of ways, GNR was that bridge, because in the mid '80s it had gone. Metal had gone, like you're talking about Black Sabbath, and you had like the British wave of metal, and you had the Judas Priests, and you had Maiden, and you had all this, and then it got kind of in the middle, there more of a pop element and kind of a prettier element. In like with a lot of the hair bands and whatnot, but then Guns N' Roses comes out, and that's dangerous, and it's like dark, but it's great, and that paved the way for what would be this next movement.
No, absolutely. You're right. When you look at Guns N' Roses, look at Jane's Addiction, particularly. You look at bands that didn't hit that stratosphere like Fishbone. It was a very exciting time. And lastly, I know I could forever. I don't want to hold you up all day and spend hours with you, Myles. As tempting as that would be, but as the credits roll. When I mentioned Spinal Tap, I have to ask you, out of all the years you've been on the road, what is the weirdest Spinal Tapian moment that you've experienced in any of your bands?
Oh man, I feel like I've lived most every single one of those moments. It almost gets to the point where I thought it was funny the first time I saw it. In fact, the first time I saw that movie was pre-rehearsal to that band I was telling you about that played the drug-free rock off. One of our rehearsals, I remember.
It sounds like something out of Spinal Tap.
Yeah, right. And so we watched it, and it was like, oh, it was funny, but little did I know, like half of those, being lost under the stage, like you hear the crowd, like and you're like, you got your guitar, and you're like, I can't find the stage entrance, and like you're in the belly of the theater, and it was just. And it's literally just every cliche I feel like I've lived at one point.
Oh my God! I still think it's the funniest movie about music, one of the funniest ever. And conclude with Years ago, I was asked, "Would you like to interview Christopher Guest as Christopher Guest or Michael McKean as David St. Hubbins?" And my colleague at the time said, "I'm never going to interview a character. Give me Christopher Guest. You can have David St. Hubbins." I said, "You're crazy. I said, if I had a choice between interviewing Paul Rubens or Pee Wee Herman, I'm going with Pee Wee Herman." And the crazy part in closing here is that he did it in character, and it was so funny. I'm like, there is a movie that will never be written. It should have been. It was just some of the funniest material I have on tape.
Oh, really?
Unbelievable.
He's great. I mean, what a mega talented guy that is. Like, not only is he, he's got the comedic chops, so he can play guitar and like those guys. That's a brilliant. That whole thing. I can't say enough about it. Kudos to that.
Not at all. And for being so funny in the moment, I'll conclude with this. Back in the day, I would ask interview subjects, some of them leave an outgoing voicemail for me. And I asked Michael McKean as St. Hubbins, I said, "Can you leave an outgoing voicemail for me?" And he said, "Sure. What would you like me to do?" And I said, "I would like you to say hi. Ed has a barbecue this weekend, and Spinal Tap's going to be there." And he said, "Ho, I can't do that. Spinal Tap's not going to be there. That would be misleading people. Spinal Tap's not about misleading people." He said, "Can you give me something else?" And I said, "Sure. I said, "Say hi, David St. Hubbins and Spinal Tap. Ed can't get to the phone right now because he's planning his barbecue. Please arrive early. The party only goes up to 11." And he said, "I could do that."
That's good. That's clever.
I
like it.
Hey, somebody has to be.
That's right.
Most days I'm not Myles. But anyway, but thank you again for taking so much time tonight. It was always a pleasure chatting with you. I can't wait to see you live either solo or with Alter Bridge or in whatever configuration in Spokane. And I wish you the best of luck as we navigate through this tricky 2021.
Thank you, brother. It's always a pleasure. I love talking music with you.
Well, until next time. I won't bother you until then.
All right. You take care.